Warning, this podcast may contain profanity, strong opinions, and hilarity. This is a story of a time long ago.
Or perhaps a tale of grim darkness in the far future.
An age of myth and legend.
In which there is only war.
When the gods of chaos were petty and cruel.
And plagued mankind with all manners of suffering.
Only two men dared to challenge their power.
Brohammer.
Hello, hello, hello.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
Welcome back to the third episode of Brohammer, a Warhammer Podcast.
It's great to be back.
It is great to be back. So the two-headed Daemon of Tzeentch, Kairos Fate Weaver, has returned. Caw-caw!
Caw-caw!
Caw-caw! Indeed. All right, so just want to start off again by saying thank you so much to everybody who's been listening and liking and subscribing and all the rest of it. It's been really, really heartwarming stuff. We're having a lot of fun doing it. Well, at least I am anyway. Are you? Yeah. I love it. I love getting prepared for it, and I love picking the topics and you know, getting the questions all lined up that everyone's been sending us, which is fantastic. So thank you all so much for that. I am your host, Jordan, aka Lamian Maximus, aka the chosen son of the War Master, aka the Wrath of Grugni, the Slayer of Oryx.
I am Jared, aka the one who is on holidays at the moment.
Yeah.
As a teacher, so enjoying and relishing the 2 weeks away from
educating hiatus.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, lovely.
Really
also,
fun.
AKA the wise one.
The wise one.
Are we still rolling with the wise one?
Think so.
Yeah,
So,
I like
yeah.
that. Unless you're happy to add to your title the way I
That's
do.
it.
Like,
Yeah.
by the time we're at episode 10, I'll be like a Brazilian person with 50 names at the
Yeah,
end.
you'll have at least 2 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, but after I mentioned in last episode that I finally killed Gordrak the Fist of Gork, I feel like the moniker of Slayer of Oryx is quite...
Until something else big happens like that.
Yeah, quite befitting. So, and just a bit of a heads up, the main draw of our episode today will be Caradron Overlord talk. So I'll be tooting the horn of the...
On a boat, motherfuckers.
On the boat, motherfuckers! Of the great skyport of Barak Nar. So yeah, so we'll get kicked off first of all with a little bit of a not a retraction or anything like that, but just
a follow-up shout-out.
Yeah, follow-up shout-out, because in the last episode I made a big list of all my sort of favourite, you know, Insta boys and girls that I sort of frequent and communicate with on the regular. And I had him on the list, and somehow, you know, working my way down through the dot points, I seemed to miss him out. So I just wanted to make a little special mention for my mon ami, Justin, aka Just Starin. Had him in the hobby shout-out list, like I said last episode, but yeah, missed him out somehow, don't know how. He paints beautiful Sons of Horus and White Scars. I just want to thank you, man, for all your support. And for everybody, just to make sure they check out his profile for some fantastic heresy action. Big French kiss to you, monsieur. So yeah, just wanted to make sure I included that. Thanks, Justin.
It's kind of like missing a critical hit in a big collection of dice roll. Like you know it's there, you know it's important, but sometimes you miscount it.
Yeah, and it gets to the next turn, you're like, oh, I didn't move that unit or something like that. But yeah, like seriously, I felt terrible when I went back through the show notes afterwards and realised I'd missed him out. And I still get a bit of anxiety with the whole shout out thing, because I'm always worried. It's like an acceptance speech. I'm always worried I'm gonna miss someone out, or forget to thank mum, or you know, forget to thank God or something like that. So yeah, so look, that's all good now. Thanks for that.
And I guess moving on now, like current projects. So last podcast we talked about, you had met the 4K followers on Instagram, and you've actually since then finished the giveaway project. The Imperial Fist is finished.
Yeah, he's all done. He's locked and loaded. He's sitting up there on the shelf
drying nicely.
As you can see there. Super excited about that. So yeah, hit 4K.
And where's he off to again?
He's off to California, to another Jared, actually. I don't know if I told you that or not. He actually spells it the same as you as well. Which
the one and only way.
Which is pretty cool. Yeah, so Jared in California at savage.mini painting. He's going to be receiving that one, and he's quite excited, as am I, to send that to him.
Your best painted decal yet?
It is. It's my best freehand work to date, hands down. No pun intended, because it is an Imperial Fist after all. So I really luxuriated and took my time with this one. Lots and lots of thin coats of paint. So hit $4,000 on Instagram a couple of weeks ago. Obviously did the competition, drew the winner, etc.
Are you close to 5 now? Or?
Not close. But I mean, it's still ramping up. I've got maybe another 250 since then. But I mean, who's counting really? I mean, me. I'm counting. So yeah. So I'm currently around the 4,200 mark, and I only posted up. I've done some whip shots and stuff along the way. Whip, for those of you, work in progress. Along the way, just sort of showing off what I've been doing. But I posted up the final sort of done and dusted, buttoned up shots of him last night, and my Instagram's been exploding with, great work, man, and all the rest of it. And I've made sure to put in the comments there that I did state it is 100% all freehand work. There are no transfers, decals involved whatsoever. I spent ages squinting with my tongue out, staring at his tiny little shoulder pad, painting the Imperial Fist logo and some Maltese crosses, which I'm very, very proud of, if I do say so myself. So, so he's now sitting there with his final coat of varnish on. I like to let him dry for about a week or so. I'm a bit paranoid probably before I chuck him in a box with packing foam in case they sweat, or I'd hate for it to come out sticky on the other end. So Jared in California, he knows it's going to be on its way, and hopefully with the way COVID is, the mail's picked up a little bit in the US because
safe and sound as
it's been a bit of a delay there. But and I made my first ever video with he has a name actually. I named him Vaughn Litanus. I got it from I'll just double check that myself actually. Got it from the Imperial Fist name generator that comes in the Kill Team core manual, which is pretty cool. Gives you a bunch of first and surnames that you can chuck together. Yeah, Vaughn Litanus. They were just my favourites out of the group there. So that's his name.
A child's name.
Yeah, I'm Jared, obviously in California. Feel free to rename him as you see fit. But he will leave Australia as Vaughn Litanus and may arrive as something else. But yeah, first video with my new little toy, which is like a rotating jewelry turntable, which is actually something I bought for a future project coming up. We'll talk about that a little bit later on.
And you're also working towards a couple of armies in terms of, not finishing them off, but just them.
Yeah, so I mean the perpetual grind that is my Sons of Horus Heresy army. About 2,500 points in total that I own and have, at various stages there, as I've mentioned before. But the boys and I, Bilbo Schwaggins, the Bristles, and Hardcore Hobby Big D, we've made a little bit of a smaller goal for ourselves, a more attainable goal of a 1,250 point ZM or Zone Mortalis, sort of more of an indoor skirmish kind of list, so that we can all... We've worked out our smaller lists and we can crank out those models first and foremost, maybe put the big scary stuff to the side, like the Primarchs and the tanks and stuff. And at least that way we can start rolling some dice, and get our little heresy game group happening. So, yeah, that's sort of project one on the table. And then, as always, and we'll get into these boys a little bit later on as they are the main focus of today's show, my 2,000 points of Caradron Overlord army sort of had a bit of a ramp up recently.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah, so the fleet has expanded quite...
Spending more time in the sky.
Yeah, has expanded quite exponentially. As I've got some more boats. We've got some more boats on deck, as it were. Pun intended.
Now, in terms of upcoming projects, so the Kill Team campaign book, paint guide, has actually dropped and is now available.
So the Istvan 3 campaign book, check him out at Two Thin Quotes. Extremely talented stuff. If you missed out on the last episodes when I've mentioned it, it's basically a 40k Kill Team supplement, but using all heresy data cards and heresy information for you to play the Loyalists and Traitor Legions in the 30k universe. Fantastic stuff. Was really, really happy to be part of it. And I've got a 14-page spread in there of my miniatures with very detailed painting guides, etc. So that's been up now for a couple of weeks and has got like over 4,000 downloads already. So really, really taken off, The last book he did got about 20,000 downloads. I wasn't part of that one. But the sort of hot tip there is that we're going to be doing a follow-up book in which I'll be doing paint guides broken down this time. In this current book, I already had the miniatures painted, so what I did was I took very detailed photos and wrote out a very detailed verbal paint guide. But this time round, it's going to be sort of real battle tome-esque stuff where I take snapshots at each, I'd like put on a base coat, take a snapshot. I do the washes, I put on a snapshot, so you can really see the progression. And that's going to be for the 8 Loyalist Legions, or 7 Loyalist Legions, however you want to look at it, for the Horus Heresy. So that's pretty exciting stuff. The Loyalist Legions are probably the last holes in my heresy painting sort of lineup, as far as I'll by the time I've finished that, I think I would have painted all 18 legions of the heresy, which is pretty exciting stuff. Yeah. Just a couple of the Loyalist ones I've never touched, like White Scars I've never done, Iron Hands I've never done. And then I think there's maybe only 1 or 2 left after that. The Night Lords and the Thousand Suns somehow have been left to the end, but that's okay. We'll get there eventually. Raven Guard was the other one. So Yeah, so that's pretty exciting stuff.
Commission work in terms of that's only just recently occurred?
I do, yeah. It's all been happening. So I mean, that book that I just mentioned, that's scheduled for like January next year. So still got a bit of lead on time for that one to get all those boys sorted.
But in the meantime, the new challenge or the new...
Yeah, so basically the boats that you see there on the shelf, they're Wise One. So I currently have a ironclad, a frigate, and a second gun hauler for the Baraknar fleet. I received those sort of pre-built as payment for some upcoming commission work that I'll be doing. So I'll be painting Nathaniel Garrow, the original Knight Errant in the Heresy. Pretty cool stuff. He's like, just for your information, if you're not sure, he's basically an ex-Death Guard member who's a very staunch loyalist who jumped in the Eisenstein and as soon as he found out what Horus was up to, he went and did a bit of dibber-dobbing and let the good guys know, what was happening after receiving the message from Saul and all the rest of it. So, and I'm also going to be painting for the same customer who paid me in boats. We traded in boats. Yeah, in true Caradron fashion, we traded a fleet for service. I'll be painting I don't think he has a name actually. He's just the Catachan sergeant who happens to look exactly like Carl Weathers from the Predator movies, Dylan from the Predator movies.
Hopefully he doesn't go out the same way, but give him a mighty handshake.
Well, they gave him a big power fist as a bit of a salute.
Oh.
Not only did they dress him exactly the same with the cap, and he's got his sweaty muscles rippling in his army fatigue vest, but he's also got a big ass power fist, which I think symbolises that classic Predator handshake. Come here, you son of a bitch! That stuff. So
meme worthy.
Yeah, and on a non-hobby, well, it's still a hobby, I guess, but on a non-mini painting note, I'm actually receiving some requests for some drawing commissions recently. So, for a very special lady in my life at the moment, I did a little gift drawing of her and her dog as Simpsons characters, given obviously she loves her dog and she loves the Simpsons, so she got a kick out of that. And then, unbeknownst to me or unintentionally, friends of hers saw that drawing and have now requested portraits of their own, of themselves and their pets and their family, as Simpsons characters. So, I've got a few of those lined up, and it's just more money to spend on miniatures, really, is what that equates to. So, just thought I'd give myself a little shout out there, because I'm pretty chuffed there. Being a paid artist and author and photographer all at the same time is pretty cool stuff. So
I like that. The Swiss Army knife. You've also got, I know it sounds a bit ironic to say top secret Heresy Project collab, so if it was top secret we wouldn't be mentioning it.
No, okay, there's a reason I'm mentioning it, so I'm going to reveal very little. All I will reveal is that I'm extremely excited about it. It is a collaboration between myself and a very good friend of mine, my brother from a Fenris-born mother, the mini painting papa. It's something that we've been cooking up in secret. It's sizzle. It's Heresy related. And it's probably still a couple of months away. It is the reason I've got my little rotating jewelry stand, because I'm going to be making a video. That much I will tell you. So there will be some visual content on the Brohammer YouTube channel eventually. That's okay, Jared. You can pretend you don't know what it is. I've already told you, I'm sure. But or you've forgotten.
You got so many projects, on the go.
Yeah, so this one's pretty dear to my heart. It's going to have a little bit of a sentimental and altruistic sort of slant to it there. A bit of a community message involved. Little bits and pieces there. It will be heresy based, and I've been gathering bits and getting all the ducks in a row to set that up.
Watch this space.
Watch this space. And the reason I even bring it up with that extremely, vague and useless description is I want people to hassle me about it. I want this to be I don't want this to be one of those things I sizzle and dangle the carrot and it never eventuates. This is my setting myself a trap for self-motivation is basically what this is. Where you get someone to hold you accountable to work out or to, eat right or to, quit a bad habit or something like that. So this is what that is. So I just want to make sure that if I ever listen back to this podcast, I'm like, I said I was going to do that. So that's
mental note.
Yeah. So that's that basically. So, but very excited.
Oh, good. And I guess onto the new releases. I think we spoke about this maybe in the first podcast, or at least, I remember when they first came out, but there's the Lumineth Realm Lords in terms of the high, very reminiscent of the High Elves.
Yeah, so
I've called them, one of the newest miniatures is the Staunch Cow God, or what?
The Alarith's. Oh no, hang on. Alarith's Stone Mage is the little wizard man sitting crisscross applesauce up on his bonsai tree. It's the Alarith. It's the spirit of the mountain is what it is. It's basically the elves call on the spirit of the mountain of Haish, and they manifest into like stone golems that wear cow masks for reasons. But I mean, it's a beautiful model. It's maybe not something that I'd want to tackle hobby-wise. They look a bit, delicate and a bit full-on for me. But
anything that with that much white and cream can be very daunting.
Yeah, I mean, the new elves, the Lumineth Realm Lords, they've been sort of dangled for a couple of months now. They probably would have been released already if it wasn't for COVID. I think that really threw a spanner in the release schedule there. So they probably would have been out by now. But they've just hit the shelves. I was in the shop the other day, and the whole range is sitting on the shelf. The Hammer Boys, the Alarith Stone Guard are my favourite, actually. They're elves with hammers. So they're pretty cool. Actually, when I first saw them, I really got excited about the Hammer Boys because I thought, oh, hammers, that's a bit Duarden. So I thought maybe I could ally them in with my KO. But then it turned out, it was one of those things where I was like, oh, I'm going to have to buy new models. But then it turned out that they can actually only be allied with the Idoneth Deepkin, which is a bit of a weird thing. But so then it turned out I literally couldn't put them in my army legally, which took them off my plate.
List, yeah.
But he's like, oh, I can't have them, so I'm not going to buy them. So that was kind of good, actually.
Speaking of, I guess, those that can be hired for help or in any army. We have
the mercenaries.
The very big mercenaries, the Gargants, in terms of, so they're about to...
Yeah, so the Lumineth are out, the Mega Gargants, any day now. So what are we now? We're sort of 2nd of October. Jeez, this year's going fast. 2nd of October. So any day now we're expecting to see the pre-order email drop into our inboxes of when we can get our hands on the Mega Gargants, the 3 sort of named variants, and then obviously you can make it into any sort of generic Gargant that you're after, which is pretty cool. I know a lot of the hobby YouTube content creators are pretty keen on these models.
I look forward to seeing how many, like how much of a variation is made, or with the model, or like White Demon and that. or Gold Demon,
White Dwarf,
White Dwarf,
Golden Demon, correct?
Colors,
Yep.
Like to see what they do with that in terms of I always like the idea of when you have a big model like that. There's a lot to do, or there's a lot of potential with it.
It's very clever how they've done it, actually, because it's essentially the same legs and torso, I guess, but they have 3 separate heads and then 3 very separate themes. So you've got the Kraken Eater, who's very nautically themed with like he's got an octopus tentacle and like fishnets hanging off of him, and stuff like that.
Anything like that always reminds me of like BFG, not the big friendly giant himself, but the other giants. So.
Yeah, all the different giants. So it definitely has a bit of a BFG vibe now that you mention it, if you look at the artwork and stuff. But I've seen some cool conversions already for the elves. I've seen, so you got the Skaven Vermin Lord, which is your big rat demon.
Yeah.
And he's only really got the one model that has a few variants similar to the Mega Gargant, but I've already seen the Lumineth Realm Lord sort of cow god spirit being converted into like a Skaven Vermin Lord with the Vermin Lord head on it, and the mountains turned into warpstone.
Does the head kind of sit properly?
It does. It looks really good, actually. It's really, really angular and sort of really fits in with, because one of the Skaven Vermin Lords is called the Warbringer. I think it's the Warbringer or the War Master or something like that. So he's like the melee focused Vermin Lord demon, and of course, old mate Cow God's got a big giant friggin' hammer ready to bring the heat.
God, I don't know. I don't think you ever played it, but I did dabble in it. Was Diablo.
I'm familiar with Diablo.
Have you seen because they hid it in the game just because it was a joke, but you can actually warp to an incredibly hard. I don't think you
like
can
a Minotaur god kind of thing.
Well, it's just cows. Like it's these cow warriors as a joke, but they just actually run a number on you and like.
Is it Diablo's the game where you have to kill like donkeys and stuff? And they just explode into a million. Is that one?
I can't.
Well, you build up levels by destroying.
All I know
beasts.
is I had a paladin and I committed a lot to it, and like playing online with a friend in Diablo 2, even back in the day when it was very hard to just get online, and then to lose it all. I think in a I forget what it's called, where it's one instant death.
Yeah.
It was very heartbreaking, but
like having to reset your character, like World of Warcraft kind of thing.
And I guess, funnily enough, from all the new releases, who knew that a bit of equipment could be so exciting, but the dice have finally arrived.
They have arrived. Just before we move on, I just wanted to say that I'm really looking forward to seeing somebody make a big green Gargant. Like I want to see the Gargant added into an Auric army.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean? So like a big, like almost like an orc that just, like an orc with a pituitary gland issue or something where he's just grown gigantic. So I mean, all you have to do is paint him green and give him some green stuff ears or something like that.
Is he as staunch as an orc? Like the giants, are they as muscular?
There's sort of different proportions, but orcs can be all over the place, obviously. So yeah, I mean, I reckon I hope somebody's going to do that. I'd really like to see that. But yeah, sorry, before we move on, just wanted to slot that in there. But yes, as I talked about last episode, they had just released the new.
So did the bag come with it, or
no? The bag is mine. The bag. I bought so many. I bought 4 sets because I was terrified of missing out on these. Because Forge World has this horrible habit of bringing things out, not letting you know they're limited, and then they disappear off the face of the earth, never to be seen again. So,
wow.
Yeah, this is the first time the wise one is laying eyes on these. So they are never to be rolled outside of game. It's a little superstition I have, so please do not roll them. But they are beautiful, beautiful Sons of Horus themed heresy dice.
So how many do you have in total now?
I got 4 sets, so you get 20 in a set. Well, 19 in each set and 1 scatter die. So technically, I think I had that's 76, 4 times 19.
That's basic math that I can't do.
No, that's not my bag either. Yeah. So yeah, I've got them, so I can roll my Sons of the Warmaster with pride now, and
I'm very.
They're beautifully made too. I marvel at the quality of them. Actually, they're fantastic.
I wonder when it became a thing, or like when dice, actually started having the smooth edges rather than the pointed edge.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
I'm always thinking of like
casino dice. Yeah, have the square edges because they're more balanced, I suppose.
Yeah.
But they're beautiful. They're beautiful, aren't they?
They smell nice.
They do. They got that. They got that new dice smell.
Who would have
there's some
imagined
sixes in my future.
Who would have imagined that was going to be a thing? A new dice smell.
Yeah, and they made them correctly, obviously, with the symbol on the 6. Sometimes you get dice have the symbol on the 1, and it can be very confusing because obviously when I roll these bad boys, I want to see nothing but Sons of Horus eyes looking back at me. That means it's a big bouquet of 6s. That's what I want. So. Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, so I spent a week's rent on dice like an idiot, but hey, I had to do it because, like I said, if they were to disappear... Oh, here we go. I found the scatter dice now. So that's when you're dropping a big blast template, or your Land Raider's doing something fancy maybe, or Phosphex bombing. You roll one of those bad boys and maybe it scatters 6 inches to that direction, or maybe it's a direct hit. Or
I look forward to playing with those.
Yeah, me too. For the ZM stuff would be fantastic. So yeah, went hard into those, but now I'm set for dice for life, basically.
You say that now, but we'll see. So.
Well, I mean, see, with the Heresy Army especially, you need a lot of dice because they do a thing called the Fury of the Legion, where the boys double tap their bolters. So if you've got a squad of 20 boys, you're rolling 40 dice. So I wanted to make sure I had plenty O dice
to roll,
in the chamber, ready to roll. So that's pretty much it for the new releases currently.
So I guess moving on, we have some questions since the last podcast that you've been asked. Is it through the Instagram that people are hitting?
Yeah, I get them through Instagram. I get them through sort of YouTube. I get them, just via DM most of the time. Yeah, and I put up a story every now and then to say if you've got any questions that, I'll log them down and get them all ready for you.
Yeah, and I think the first one comes from Lee Riley, who asked you what are your current thoughts, or I guess, on the state of Warhammer 40k lore-wise, because I mean, there's always revisions, and that's, because they're up to is it 8th or 9th edition?
9th edition now, or new 40k as they're dubbing it, but numerically it's 9th edition. Yeah, they're not calling it 9th, but it is 9th edition. So what do I think of the current state of Warhammer 40k lore-wise? So 40k is actually probably the only major game system that doesn't really appeal to me. I don't know if that's maybe my inner hipster not wanting to, run with the crowd kind of thing, but it seems like it moves...
Is it the most popular...
It's their biggest draw card, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's their cash cow. It's also how they get, a lot of new people and children into the hobby, and it's the biggest, baddest, most flamboyant game that they make. It's what they've got the most units for. It's what they've got the most models for. I'm pretty sure. I think definitely outsells Sigmar. And they have the biggest tournaments. So they're the biggest draw card at the the Grand Nationals and the events and stuff like that. As far as the lore goes, though, I mean, obviously 40k is the original lore, and then 30k is like a prequel spin-off, which is my true love, is 30k. Yeah. Because it's more of a historical thing where the characters are sort of fleshed out a bit more and it's a bit more thematic and follows a very close historical sort of story. The current state, I mean, I think 40K's whole bag is that it's always an absolute mess, but it's a big, fun, explodey, bloody mess. I mean, that's what makes it kind of cool. I mean, they're always adding something new. They're always flipping the meta on its head. There's always some better, cooler thing around the corner. And for those of you who don't know, and Jared, you might not even know yourself, but the way that it works is the sculptors create models, and then the lore forms around the models. Oh. So they don't write a story and then make models, which a lot of people think would be the logical way to do it. The models come out first. The sculptors make cool things.
It's very much like music, how sometimes it's not more often, but it's not always the lyrics first. So.
Yeah, and then and also it gives the lore writers and the Black Library authors something visual, so they get something plopped in front of them, like here's a new squad of these Primaris Space Marine, aggressors or whatever they might be, and they get to look at them and visualize what they could be about, their backstory, things like that. I mean, the honest answer is it seems like a bit of a mess to me, honestly, and I just can't keep up with it, so I don't try. I like to stick in my old heresy where I know what's what, and up is up and down is down, and who's who and who's dead and who's alive. And 40K, there's too many questions there for me, honestly. It's just not something I'm ready to dive into. And I mean, the library is 1,000 books deep, of the lore. It's been going 40 years. It's huge. It's so expansive. I mean, I love it, but I can't keep my finger on the 40K pulse, so to speak.
Yeah, but so when was the last time that they actually had a new army appear in the 40K universe? I mean, I remember back in the day when, it was Tau, and then the Necrons, I think, came after the Tau. And I think
the Necrons were pre-Tau, because the Necrons were still metal. The original Necrons were metal, so that means they're older than Tau.
Well, they were just revised, though, in terms of the models?
Well, the Necrons have only... In New 40K, 9th edition, is the first revision of a plastic Necron. So your basic Necron warrior crew is now... I remember
back in the day, they were, really thin, very Terminator-esque, and it was...
with the green plastic tubes and stuff. So they hung around a really long time.
But were they out before the Tau?
I can't remember. We were pretty young and not really game focused at that point, so they may well have predated the Tau. I was thinking in
terms of the drop. But so what was the last new army? Has there been?
I think so. The last new 40K army that I think, and I could be wrong here, but I think the Gene Stealer cult range.
Oh right,
or maybe the Admech actually, the Mechanicus. They're pretty
bit
fresh.
Of a hybrid of previous ideas.
Yeah, I mean they constantly work their way around and they add bits and bobs to certain ranges, but some ranges are so big and expansive, like the Orcs, and before the Primaris came in, the Space Marines had sort of just had bits and bobs added here and there. But I'm trying to think, as far as actual factions go.
I have to go back and look that up. So
I mean, so I hope that answers your question, Lee. Sort of, I guess. Yeah, I mean, I still love it. I love it.
Too big to get behind in that.
Yeah. Look, for me personally, if I was to try to get into 40K, I'd look at it, and I don't feel like I wouldn't know where to start. I mean, I'd probably go Space Marine, but I don't particularly like Primaris. None of the other factions kind of jump out at me. Although the premise of new Khorne and Slaanesh Chaos Space Marines is pretty exciting stuff. So. I was pretty excited when the Fabius Bile model came out, but then they didn't really follow him up with anything else. So if he gets a retinue or some new Noise Marines or something, I may be tempted to...
Then we'll talk.
Yeah, then we'll talk. Exactly right. But for now, I'm happy living in the past in the 30K universe. So
10,000.
I got enough to do back in time in the year 30,000 at the moment. So
something to look forward to. Yeah. I guess next up you have this is a two-part question by Christian, aka... is it Gelt Balthazar?
Yeah, Gelt Balthazar. Yeah, good friend of mine, a Canadian painter who does brilliant work, who I shouted out in the last episode.
Yeah, so how do you push yourself, past the barrier of looks good enough? So are you ever really, I guess, happy with a miniature once it's done, but also then what motivates you to continue painting? I think I know the answer to that, but
go on. I'd love to know your take on that.
I know, with the latest commission and just looking at how quickly your paints have grown. It's about new challenge, different color scheme, and that's the benefit of painting different armies, even if it be one piece or like I said, commission work. So just the new challenge, coming off the back of the new boats that you've scored. I know they're already pre-built, and that, for some that would be a no deal whatsoever. But then there's also that no risk aspect of that, so you can only trial and work from there. So
spot on. I mean, so the second part of that question, what motivates you to continue painting? I mean, obviously wanting to play games with the boys, loving the hobby. I'm always jonesing to be at the paint desk. It's just sometimes you get a bit sick of painting a sea of green.
Still not able to do that at the shop as well?
No, not at the shop. The shop's still a no-go play zone, but the boys. One of the boys has just moved into a new house and has got a pretty sweet hobby set up.
Oh, nice.
On the go. You can actually check out some of his stuff. So that's Big D at hardcore_hobby there, and him and Bilbo Schwaggins run a YouTube channel with another guy we know called Coach, called the D6 Fix, which I've shouted out before. So if you love Middle Earth and you like Middle Earth content and army building, and they've even started playing some games and battle report type of stuff. So check out the D6 Fix, just a little bit of an inside plug there. But for me, what keeps me going, obviously, are those things I want to play. I want my armies finished. I love the hobby. But you do get a bit of burnout. I got a bit of burnout after I tried to push through August, painting every single day to get some armies finished. I got a lot done, but you do get that burnout. But so like Mr. Fist here, I love doing my 4K or my 1K, every 1K giveaway, because it's like, it's like spinning the bingo wheel. You never know what's going to come out. You never know what color combo is going to come out. And at the end of the day, I put everything on hold and I get to paint yellow and some metallic grey and an Imperial Fist logo. And if anything, it's just a palette cleanser because there's no pressure to do a whole Imperial Fist army. I'm doing, because, the winner, Jared from California, who won the 4K giveaway, he requested an Imperial Fist. We chatted. I asked him, what do you like? What sort of weapon options are you after? And we both came to agreement on like a Sword Brethren, which is why he's not completely yellow. He's mostly charcoal with the yellow accents, because it's a special unit in the Heresy, which I was stoked that he liked that unit, because it's actually one of my favourite Imperial Fist units, sort of the precursor to the Black Templar, successor chapter and stuff like that. But it just gives you a bit of a refresh. So when I painted my Minotaur and my Salamander and my Alpha Legion all being singular models, it reinvigorates you, because you get to use a different colour. You get to think outside the square. It's not just the same old. Even though I love my sons, too much of anything, moderation is the key. So
and I guess what's the looks good enough standard?
Yeah, so pushing past the barrier of the looks, that was a tricky one for me, especially when I first got started. As I've mentioned before, my first squad I stripped about 3 or 4 times, had to get the colours spot on. OCD took over. But these days, every mini I paint, not only do I feel like I get better at painting or quicker or more efficient, I feel like I also loosen up a little bit, which is, another great...
Important.
Yeah, it's a great aspect of the hobby, because after all, I do it to have fun and relax. So,
you don't be stressed.
Yeah, when I see guys online who are constantly looking for feedback and criticism and C&C, they call it, critique and criticism or whatever. I mean, that's all well and good. And a lot of YouTube content creators do push the whole, you should be getting better. But then I feel like at the end of the day, it's a hobby and it's your hobby and it should be relaxing. So I need to make it relaxing for myself. So I have a little test, and I'm sure it's not something I've invented or I've just picked up there. So look, I have very good eyesight. As you can probably tell by my little freehand shoulder pads and stuff. I don't use magnifiers. I use my bare naked eyes, which sometimes dry out from lack of blinking while I'm doing it. But I have a test. So I hold it in front of my face about 6 inches away, and I spin it around. And if my internal quality level meter and my eyes are happy with it, I then sort of move it away from me about arm's length, or say 2 or 3 feet away, because that's typically how you're going to see it on a gaming table. If it passes those 2 tests, it then gets to the third test, which is the photograph test. Now, it's a weird thing. For some reason, our brains do this weird thing when we're looking. You can paint a mini and you can go, that looks bloody awesome. 6 inches away looks great. Arm's length away looks fantastic. You take a couple of photos of it. You look at a 2D photograph of that same thing that you've just had in your hand, physically, and for some reason mistakes show up, even sometimes things that you forgot to paint, that you've literally been staring at this thing for 8 hours and you didn't realize you forgot to paint his little leather pouch. But for some reason, when you transfer it into the medium of photograph, you get like a whole nother perspective on the mini. So basically the answer there is, I do my 6-inch test, I do my arm's length test, then I take photographs, and if I'm happy with the way it looks in the photographs, then it's hit the 3 checkpoints required to be put to the side and labelled done. So it's a bit of a convoluted process there, but my OCD won't allow me to do it any other way, unfortunately. So that's just how I roll as far as that goes.
The next question asked by Jonas is, what is your favourite unit? I guess with regards to 30k, 40k, and then it's a bit of Age of Sigma. So however you want to start.
Yeah, so that's Sigma, sort of the 3 main systems. Yeah, so for Age of Sigma, I'm going to split this one down the middle. I have 2 favourite units, and they'll both be featuring in my Caradron Overlord Barak-Nar army. So I love me some Thunderers. And you can see them over there on the shelf, Jared. They look like the Golden Army from Hellboy at the moment because they're in the beautiful primed Runelord brass colour that came out with the new 40k. So they're your heavily armoured military wing of the Caradron Overlord army. So they've got your Aether Shot rifles and Aether Shot cannons and scatterguns and deck sweepers and mortar bombs. And so they're your heavy artillery foot troops, basically. So Grundstock Thunderers, they're my boys. And I also really love, and I run Stormcast alloys. I run Stormcast allies with my Caradron force. About 360 points. I think you can only have 400. Yeah, 360 points of Stormcast Eternals. And my favourite unit within the Stormcast Eternals are the Decimators. So they're like, if you're comparing them to 40k, you've got your regular Marines would be like your Liberators, and your Decimators would be like your Terminators. They're like your big heavy boys with your Soul Star maces and your big halberds and stuff like that. So that's 30k. So yeah, Thunderers and the heavy armoured Stormcast.
And then rounding it out.
So 40k, my favourite unit. This one was a tricky one, actually. I had to really sort of think about this. I think 40k, and I'm sort of cheating because they're technically 30k units as well. But I mean, obviously everything 30k is a prequel to 40k, so they're going to be swapping some IP there. But it's a and I'm going to cheat again. I'm going to do 2 units, but they're similar, so they sort of fall in the same category. But the Noise Marines and the Khorne Berserkers, they're just my favourite 40k stuff. They're 10,000 years old. They're battle hardened. They're mutated. They're dilapidated. They're your hard bastards. To survive 10,000 years of taking skulls and blasting sonic weapons till your enemy is like literally deaf and dead. That's just really, really cool stuff. So I mean,
it's commitment.
Yeah, that's where I'd go in 40k. And then very specific, obviously I love my Sons of Horus, and very specifically within the Sons of Horus, again, I'm splitting down the middle because I can never choose. But you've got your Catalan Reavers, which are basically your first company Sons of Horus specialty assault marines. So they're your black Reaver Marines. I've got a painted squad of them that I've finished up there on my Instagram as well. And then yet to be painted are my Justaran Terminators, which are basically Big Papa Horus's retinue or bodyguard. So they're the black in an army of green. Your first company in Sons of Horus are black with red shoulder pads. That's how you distinguish them. They're the elite, the best of the first among equals is how they're known. So they're pretty savage stuff, really, and pretty savage on the table too, from what I've heard. So yeah, first company Justaran and Catalan Reavers are my 30k favourite units.
And moving on from that though. Raw Doc Mini has asked, well, what artistic representations of the 40k, kind of blending their universe speak most to you?
So artistic, I mean, I love all the art. It's fantastic stuff. They have a multitude of artists working on all the books and the codexes and the website and all that sort of stuff. It's very specifically with 30, not so much 40k. The 40k art to me, because as I've mentioned before, 40k is not really my jam. But specifically in the 30k black books, so those of you who know, you've got your black books, which are like your campaign books for the Horus Heresy. I think they're up to book 9 now because the Dark Angels and the Night Lords have just gotten their bits and pieces, and the Dark Angels got their Primarch and their new models. But within those books, they're basically very basic front-on drawings of all the different Legion armors, and I feature them on my Instagram too, because when I build my 30k Marines or Terminators or characters, that's the first place I look. I go straight to the black book artwork. They're front on. They show all the insignia. They show where all the logos go. They show the different marks of armor, the combinations of armor. So yeah, basically the black book art, and also the sketch drawings and stuff are beautiful as well. But the very specifically the black book front on, armor showcase art. That's where I get I'd say 90% of my inspo from. Yeah, definitely.
Well, I guess, talking about that and, inspiration or rather style, another question asked by Raw Doc Mini is, like, would you ever see yourself experimenting in the Bland Chitsu style of modelling? We've spoken about that before.
Yeah, so we did touch on that briefly. So Bland Chitsu, for those who aren't in the know, is a style based on a very famous long-time Games Workshop artist called John Blanche, who is responsible for some really iconic stuff, like the Sisters of Battle original art, lots of Space Marine stuff. He's amazing. His drawings have that real grimdark 40k.
You can tell when it's one of his drawings.
Yeah, if I show you one, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Very, very sketch style, very oily and muted and sepia and stuff like that. Very famous sort of stuff. And then he also used to, and I think he still does, but he models as well. He doesn't only draw, but he actually kit bashes things and they end up in White Dwarf, and that's how he has been dubbed with the style of Bland Chitsu.
So do you see yourself experimenting with that? Because you kind of mentioned the grimdark, like
I'm sort of working.
Kind of hard to do that in the your typical or your style of the clean, precise.
Yeah, so look, my style is very clean, very tidy, as we've touched on before, and that's due to the OCD and things like that. So I do find things like withering and battle damage and Bland Chitsu and stuff like that sort of tricky, even to the point where I've dubbed my painting style Dunk Chitsu, as I mentioned before, after the great Duncan Rhodes himself. A much more neater, like box art. I like to think all my boys just got issued with their armor. Yeah. Like every battle's the first battle. You know what I mean? They haven't scuffed anything yet. Everything's beautiful. And that also gives me the opportunity later on, if I ever do loosen up to the point where I feel like doing a bit of battle damage, I've got a beautiful blank canvas to start with.
Yeah.
That I can always go. You can always go add battle damage. You can't always tidy up battle damage, if that makes sense. So, I mean, look, as my OCD loosens up and I grow as a hobbyist, then I'd love to, experiment and sort of foray into the Bland Chitsu style of modelling. And sort of the third part of his question there is, how do I see the grimdark reflected in your more clean, precise aesthetic? So I guess I probably wouldn't call my style grimdark. I mean, the setting is grimdark. I mean, these are, steroided up, augmented space soldiers fighting across the galaxy for the fate of humanity. So, I mean, that's pretty grimdark in premise, you know what I mean? But I guess, some of my characters, I don't even really do the whole Games Workshop skull aesthetic and things like that. I keep it all pretty tidy and pretty clean, but I guess it's more like, I feel like my models are almost a tribute to the 30k setting, which is more like they're like a reimagining or an envisioning of a historical time in history. You know what I mean? Like almost like if you went into a military museum and they had wax mannequins lined up, with German uniforms and American uniforms, and that's how I see it in my head. That's just how I like to do it. But yeah, who knows? In future, things may change. I might get a bit more cavalier with the blood for the blood god and the gore and the green stuff, and it could go that way very easily eventually. So yeah,
we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah,
and clearly it's well known that you love your heresy, but in terms of favorite miniature, never mind the Pollux.
Never mind the Pollux. Yeah,
Pollux, yeah. They wanted to know what's your favorite heresy miniature, because they haven't released any new ones recently, or
they have done a little bit. They've been trickling out the Dark Angels, and we're still waiting for Saul Tarvitz to drop. Yeah. We know what he looks like, but nobody's got their hands on him yet. So funnily enough, even though I love my Sons of Horus, I love Papa Horus, I love my Catalan Reavers and my Justaran units and Assault Marines in general, my favourite, if I had to pick a favourite singular mini, just because the sculpt itself I find so beautiful and intriguing, and it's one of the original models that drew me into the hobby, is actually an Emperor's Child. So it's Lord Commander Eidolon of the Horus Heresy character series. I don't know if you've seen this one or not.
I think so.
So he's the Lord Commander of the Emperor's Children. So, under the Primarch, he's sort of 2IC as far as the, second in charge would go. So, beautiful filigreed purple armor, long flowing white hair, jetpack, and Thunderhammer. Thunderhammer and jetpack is a combo that I am very, very fond of. And I think he's standing on the carcass of a downed Imperial Knight.
As you do.
As you do, when you're pontificating or whatnot on the battlefield, one likes to, draw inspiration on the carcass of a dead war machine. So yeah, he's fantastic, and I've not painted him yet, and I I would love to get my hands on him one day, because I do have a little Emperor's Children contingent within my Emerald Talon Sons of Horus force. So, yeah, Lord Commander Eidolon there, Brennan, is the answer to that one.
And I guess...
Pollux. Never mind the Pollux,
Kind of jumping across that, and we've just spoken about it in terms of, current state of 40k, lore-wise, there's a lot to read through. But and then which favorite units in 40k. But if you had to commit to an army, I guess presently in the 40k, Brendan of Bagel Paints has asked who would you choose and why in terms of lore, color scheme, tabletop strategy, just simply the idea of committing to another army. Yeah,
so good old Brennan of Bagel Paints there. He's cranking out some beautiful Indomitus Eradicators at the moment, the High Lord of Caliban with his Dark Angels. So yeah, I mean, I think I've sort of touched on this before. As far as 40k goes, I'm definitely a Chaos man, because obviously in the Heresy I'm a son of the War Master, which then translates into what people call the heretic or traitor Astartes, but in my eyes are the true liberators of the universe, because the Emperor is evil, 100%. Touchy subject, but hey, I've laid it out there. That's just how it is in my view. So yeah, Khorne Berserkers and Slanesh Noise Marines, although they can never be in an accompanying force because they don't play well together. Slanesh and Khorne, they're cats and dogs there. They do not get along. Their patron gods do not see eye to eye. They're rival siblings that do not play well. But yeah, so I guess I'm thinking they're going to come out together, because as we mentioned in the Pushing the Fish episode, that I've got the hot tip that Fulgrim and Angron are coming. Who's coming first? I don't know. They're coming together, but they've both been mentioned in the lore. They're both still around, and they're both missing their key core troops, which are the Noise Marines and the Khorne Berserkers. So.
All in due time, though.
Yeah, that's definitely, if I was going to be jumping into 40k, and especially now that the Heretic Astartes and the old, Firstborn Marines have got 2 wounds and stuff now, that changes the playing field hugely as far as that goes. So, and Chaos is just cool, man. So, yeah, that's where I'd be going there. Slanesh or Khorne in 40k for sure.
And now on, I guess, just rounding out that AMA anyway.
Yeah.
But Armageddon Bound asked, I guess, because we're based in Australia at the moment, which Aussie animal? Sometimes I hear people say Aussie.
Aussie. Depends where they're from, I think, in America. So Aussie, as in, we over here, mate, we say Aussie.
Yeah.
True blue, fair dinkum, dinky die, Aussie. Aussie. So as in OZ, as in where the Wizard of Oz comes from, Oz. We're from Oz.
But which animal would we consider to be the scariest? Now, for me...
Yeah, what's yours in this one?
I rate it in terms of... not that I've ever actually come across one in the wild, thankfully, because it's, it is possible, but... I'd say based on danger and what have you, would be a brown snake.
Snake, okay.
Yeah, it's basic premises. They're venomous, they're deadly.
They're small, they can hide.
Yep, I know the SSS strategy of stop, shout or stand still, shout if you have to warn someone, and how to avoid that. But thankfully we don't live up in the hills here in Adelaide, or necessarily anywhere can be snake territory, but not in the common idea of being aware of it. So that would be for me, brown snake. Yeah, snake's definitely one of the worst ones. So this question was asked by Joe at Armageddon Bound, the Brooklyn Templar. He's a good mate of mine as well. So I just want to preface this by saying I feel like in the media, especially celebrities like your Hemsworths and your Jackmans and your big time Aussie, well-known celebrities, your Russell Crowes and all that, and to a lesser extent your Mel Gibsons and technically Russell Crowe is New Zealand.
Oh, he is too. Sorry, yeah, we just claim him all the time. That's right. So, and it's not just them, but I feel like Australians in general, because of Crocodile Dundee and the Crocodile Hunter and all that sort of stuff, I feel like they misrepresent to the rest of the world to try to look tough. So I'm sorry all the other Australians possibly listening to this, but I feel like Australians ham up the whole dangerous animal thing. I feel like they want the rest of the world to think we're living inside the friggin' Thunderdome of dangerous animals, right? Whereas you and I both know, growing up in suburban Adelaide,
CBD,
if you grow up in a suburb,
country is actually different though.
Yeah, I get. Look, you're right, but I feel like the real dangerous stuff is rural, and you have to go looking for it. I mean, so your snakes and your spiders are different because they can be everywhere. So your redbacks and your trapdoor spiders and stuff like that. Your king brown snakes, they're definitely dangerous stuff. But I know, a lot of Americans, for example, they think we all get around in kangaroo pouches and, we go down the street and see, emus and stuff like that. It's just not the case when you grow up in a major city in Australia. But yeah, I feel like it's almost like a bit of the Australian persona to like come off as tough and ham it up that, you know, oh, everything can kill you over here, mate, you know, all that sort of stuff. But so having said that, if you were going to go looking for it and you were going to, you know, follow in the footsteps of the late great Steve Irwin, I think for me, so there's two, right? So I've been up close to big red kangaroos at, like, you know, national parks and stuff like that. And these things are monstrous. So, like, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you've got different sized kangaroos. You've got, like, Skippy the bush kangaroo that you may have seen in an old Australian TV show. But we have things over here called grey kangaroos, and we have the big red. So if you ever Google a big red kangaroo, that's the kangaroo that they pretend they put boxing gloves on and will kick the shit out of you. Like, this thing... They're jacked, aren't they? Like you see them at the national parks. They're the size of a 6'4" grown man, and they've got arms on them like friggin'.
Well, they can kill you with their kick.
Oh my god! Forget about the legs. The legs are out of this world. I mean, they can jump 8 meters in a bound or something. But like the arms on these things, like, I'm serious. Google big red kangaroo. They're built like friggin' Vin Diesel in his prime. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're absolute, or The Rock even. They're fucking jacked, man. These roos. And if you pissed one of those off, or you got between him and his lady in mating season or something, forget about it. But the ones that I really like, but I mean, we've literally been in parks. You know, if you're calm and you don't mess with these kangaroos, they're not going to go out of their way to hurt you. They're not what you'd call a dangerous animal. They're more than equipped to defend themselves. Yeah. Put it that way, right? More than equipped. But the animals that really give me the friggin' heebie-jeebies that I will do anything to avoid in Australia is crocodiles. So, you know, if you're ever in the top of Australia in the Northern Territory or Darwin or anything like that, you know, or even I think Queensland, top of Queensland, anywhere where it's tropical, and, you know, you've got the sort of, you know, muddy bayou type of environment there, the Australian crocodiles they're no fooling, man. They're some serious shit. So yeah, and, you know, even seeing them in the zoo and watching the feeding displays where they take a whole raw chicken in one gulp, and, you know, if they get a hold of you and they start rolling... See, I sound like an Aussie. I sound like a proper Aussie now, pretending that I wrestle crocodiles and punch kangaroos and shit. I mean, I'm just scared, man.
Yeah. Well, that's why they're, you know, they're in the zoo and not in our backyard.
Yeah, that's right. So. And, you know, just putting on a pair of khaki shorts does not necessarily mean you're qualified to be tangling with these animals. No, so do not try this at home.
Leave it to the professionals. Exactly. Now, I guess to end this section of the AMA, it's more you'd like me to do a little colour theory test where I've picked 5 random paints from your selection.
Yeah, it's a little segment I thought of because I am a Citadel paint addict. I do love them. I love them to pieces. I love them so much that I invest in little dropper bottles and paint agitators, and I have a little it's a nail polish rack that you know, like ladies would use in a nail polish salon to display my paint, so they're all out in front of me and everything. So I just thought, you know, they have such cool names, and a lot of the paints have even a little bit of lore behind them. So I thought what I'd do is we get Jared to pick 5 colours from the Lamy and Maximus range. And I'll get him to read out the names, and I'll get him to tell me what he thinks possibly the name of the paint is referring to.
Yeah, so the first one, all trademarks, I guess, is the Gal Vorbak Red.
Yeah, Gal Vorbak Red. I wonder where you're going to go with this one. What do you think Gal Vorbak Red is maybe in relation to?
I would say I'm going to take a punt and say some sort of Chaos Overlord's name. Is it a specific person?
Well, I'll give you Chaos, so I'll give you points for Chaos. Yeah.
Or is it their, like, the Earth Red, or something that's associated with their... Like,
No, it's definitely to do with the Chaos. So yeah, did you want to add anything else to your guess before I divulge what the Gal
so
Vorbak
it's not
is?
one individual?
No, it's not actually. So the Gal Vorbak, for those who are uninitiated, they are...
It's not it's a dark...
It's a deep crimson red. Yeah. It's a beautiful colour. It's one of the newer base paints from Citadel, the Gal Vorbak Red. So the Gal Vorbak actually comes from the Heresy. So they are, I think, the first, if I'm not mistaken, they are the first Space Marines to allow themselves to be possessed by demons.
Oh, there you go.
So they're your very, very first word-bearer converts to the gods of chaos.
Yeah.
And some pretty scary shit. I don't know if you probably haven't seen the pictures. I'll show you later on. But they're basically Space Marines that have been possessed by a demon of chaos, and then they literally mutate and burst out of their armor. So they're basically like half hanging out of their armor with big claws.
I've seen the color scheme now. Like,
possessed. Yeah, the Sons of Horus have the equivalent called the Luperci or the Luperci, but the Gal Vorbak red, that is the color of their armor. So deep crimson armor with horrible hellish Space Marine mutants bursting out of them is the Gal Vorbak. So yeah,
I've only just noticed that some have like a red.
Yeah, so you've got your base paints, which are your thicker pigmented paints, and then
it says base,
and then this one is a layer paint, for example.
So I'll go I'll stick with the base paints, but this one grey seer.
Grey seer, yeah.
That's not Space Wolves. That's Skaven related.
That's correct. Yeah. It is that. Yeah.
So what is this primarily used for him, or that like the character of the seer? Is that's not the flesh, that's the fur?
It's the fur, that's correct. Yeah, so a grey seer, once again for those uninitiated, is a special breed of Skaven. They're almost like the higher upper echelon of the Master Clan Skaven. So they're notable because they stand out from the other Skaven, not only because they're basically the albinos of the Skaven race. Right. So they have the white-grey fur, but they also are blessed with horns. So if a rat in the Skaven race is born with horns, he's seen to have been the chosen of the horned rat, which is their version of the Chaos Gods. And they also have magical powers. And they're the spellcasters.
The seer,
so Thanquil, who rides Bone Ripper, he in fact is a grey seer. It's like a title of Skaven. So well done.
And this one here, it's another of the bases before the two layers.
Yeah, this one I feel like you might get just after hearing me waffle on about.
Well, Lupercal Green, so this is Heresy based?
Lupercal Green, correct.
Is this the one that they released after you made your own version of it?
No, so that was Sons of Horus Green, but you're so close, you're red hot warm. Yeah. So Lupercal, does that ring any bells?
Honestly, I hear a lot of names that I have trouble pronouncing as is. So, what's this one? Is that a person?
Lupercal Green is a very, very beautiful dark Viridian Green, which is the darker version of Sons of Horus Green, and it is specially reserved for Big Papa Horus. So Lupercal is in fact Horus's surname. He is Horus Lupercal.
You're important when you have a paint named after you.
Very much so. Yeah, so basically the battle plate of my Horus miniature, which is safely tucked away in the cabinet in my pile of shame in his little Black Heresy box. He is the dessert once I've finished the vegetables that is my Heresy army. His plate will be base coated with Lupercal Green and highlighted with Sons of Horus Green, because I prefer Horus in his green armor to his black armor and his white armor. Just he has a few wardrobe changes, does Papa Horus, but the green one is my favorite. So
now this next one is a layer, and it's interesting to think about, like, just when you think what grey looks like, but you've talked about so Slaanesh grey, clearly like Slaanesh's base coat in terms of
not a base coat. That's like
not base coat.
Yeah, it comes in a triad. So you've got Demonette hide, you've got Warp Fiend grey, and then you've got Slaanesh grey. So that being the lighter of the three. But yeah, so and you can sort of tell by looking at this one. Obviously, I mean the name gives it away. You picked a beautiful colour there, Slaanesh grey. But as you can tell, they're like purple grey.
Is there such a thing as an ugly colour, really?
Well, I mean, I definitely have least favourite colours in the Citadel.
How many colours are there in the current Citadel range?
I think it's about 300. Yeah, I don't have anywhere. Oh, I'm probably halfway there actually. I do have quite a few of them. I do. They're almost like I refer to them as like my third army. My little Citadel paint pots are like my army. But as you can tell, it's a purple grey. Yeah. So anything to do with Slaanesh is always
that purple.
Purpley, on the purpley tinge of things. Yeah, definitely.
And this last one, pardon me, is it Telkus?
Teclis.
Now, you've talked about them before. Is that Space Marine related?
No, it's not. We mentioned them earlier in the podcast. I wondered if you might
the High Elves?
Put that. Yeah. So Teclis is the leader of the Lumineth Realm Lords.
So what have you been using this blue for? What have you used it for?
So Teclis blue I use for eye lenses on my Emperor's Children. It's a good contrast to the purple. So it's a very beautiful bright blue. It doesn't cover fantastically, being the layer paint. Obviously they're less pigmented. But Teclis blue is a beautiful blue highlight colour. Also, a lot of people use it on like ultramarine armour.
Yeah, I can see that being a car colour in that way.
Oh, what now?
Like a car colour, like the type of blue that sometimes you see.
Oh, yeah, like on a Mustang or a Dodge Viper or something. Yeah, very very sports car-ish, yeah. But yeah, the elves contrast their sort of white and grey robes with, blue and orange, depending on where they're from and things like that.
So clearly you've passed your law / painting theory, which is not surprisingly, because like clearly you're very much someone who likes to enjoy every moment of it from build to paint.
I do. I get a real kick out of the paints. I love the labels. I love the,
And it's amazing to think about how far they've come since, I know, not Midwinter, but Squidmar.
Oh, Midwinter did them as well. The old set, the classic set.
Because he recently did an episode where he painted something else.
He actually got that original set from Australia. It had come all the way to Australia from the UK, sat in its shrink wrap untouched for 20 years.
Yeah.
And then he bought it off eBay from an Australian, so it made its way back home to basically exactly home to Nottingham. And he cracked it, and I think out of all I think there's maybe 10 paints in that set, or 8 paints. I think only the white... Yeah, check out that video by Midwinter Minis, the classic Warhammer.
Only the white didn't survive.
Yeah, the white went a bit chunky, and he tried to revive it, I think, but he wasn't able to. And he painted the Ultramarine and the Chaos Warrior that came in the box with all the original...
Yeah, that was wild.
Neon colours and stuff. Yeah, I love the nostalgia of that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's fantastic.
No, brilliant.
Yeah, so thanks for participating in my little paint lore segment there. I might come up with a little catchy title for that one, but as I said...
Name the feel of that brush.
Yeah, I won't blindfold you or anything weird like that, but I've got enough paint that we can maybe pull 5 out every episode, and we can educate ourselves and the public onto, where the names... Because sometimes the names don't even necessarily line up with the colours, or it might be a colour that's used on a certain miniature... that has nothing to do with the actual lore itself, so...
Crayon, I always thought, naming crayon colours would be interesting, so...
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, the flavours of the crayons.
Tickle me pink.
Yeah.
Now, moving on to the main show topic, I guess the focus is, as it's I'm on a boat, motherfuckers, your Caradron overlords and how they're currently progressing.
Yeah, quick shout out to The Lonely Island, by the way. If you haven't heard the song On a Boat, go hit YouTube immediately and check that out there. So yeah, just wanted to... This episode will be focused around the Caradron Overlord, just given that my sort of motivation to get stuck back into them has sort of been reinvigorated by the expansion of the fleet. Yeah, so and I wanted to discuss, not only why I love them, how I got into them, why I chose them, and also how I went about deciding what specific sub-faction or skyport I chose, and also I like to have a little bit of backstory with every army that I create, even though, like the Sons of Horus are the Sons of Horus, my little 16th Companies has a special sort of little lore behind it and stuff like that, and the same with my Caradron force as well.
So the first thing to kick off is the wrath of, is it Grunni?
I've heard it pronounced a few ways, but it's Grugni. So basically, my Caradron force is dubbed the Wrath of Grugni. It's a bit of a play on words because the magical substance that powers all of the Caradron technology is called the Breath of Grugni. So Grugni is like the patron god of the dwarves, or the Duarden. So he's essentially the smith god. So he's the god who toils away in the forge that makes everything cool in the land of Azir, and kits out all the Stormcast with all their armor, makes all the cool weapons and all that sort of stuff. So he's the god of the Duarden, but he actually abandoned the Duarden in the end times. So the cool thing about the Caradron, and one of the reasons I love them so much, is out of all the races in the mortal realms in the Age of Sigmar universe, they are really the only ones that do not pay homage to a god. They don't pray to gods. They're almost like the atheists of the mortal realms. It's funny, though, because obviously you can't be an atheist if you know for a fact... It's like dogma. I know for a fact God exists. I've heard him speak. I've been in his presence.
Yeah.
But because their god shunned them or sort of left them to fend for themselves, they thought, well, we're going to be self-sufficient. We're going to use technology rather than magic, even though it's technically magical technology.
Yeah.
But the way the Duarden see it is that they pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and they took to the skies to get away from all the horrible, chaos end times-y stuff that, the age of chaos that was happening on the ground. And they created this beautiful civilization in the sky of trade and commerce, and they operate off of a thing called the Caradron Code, which is a lot like the pirate code, and they reference the pirates a lot, but they're more like mercantile, mercenary capitalist types.
Oh, right.
You know what I mean? So they trade in gold, and they have, some of them are very reclusive and only deal with their own kind, but the force that I've chosen, so my army is called the Wrath of Grugni, and they are based around the skyport of Barak Nar, which is the purple and gold color scheme.
Is that the traditional color scheme?
Well, yeah, so on the boxes they use the purple and gold, but the purple and gold can also be another Skyport called Barak Urbaz. So it's sort of almost a bit generic, in the way that, there's different Space Marine chapters that can be red, but specifically mine are Barak Nar, and they are very specifically Barak Nar for a few reasons. So aside from me loving the purple and gold color scheme, Emperor's Children and stuff like that, it's... when I chose my Age of Sigmar army, I looked at it, and obviously I wanted to do something different because I chose Age of Sigmar over like 40k and 30k Space Marines, but I essentially ended up choosing the most Space Marine-y army. They're guys with guns and armor and war machines, you know what I mean? So that's kind of my jam, I guess you would say, as far as that goes. So... yeah, I mean, and Barak Nar especially, because they also get the named character. So the head of my army is the Lord Magnate of Barak Nar. He's Brock Grungson. So he is essentially, as far as, and I don't really want to compare him to Donald Trump, but basically is the Donald Trump of the Caradron world. He's the loud, obnoxious, money hungry, well-to-do entrepreneur. No, he's more like a Richard Branson type. You know what I mean? Like he's the most well off. His Skyport has the most gold and the most, the biggest fleet and the fanciest bits and bobs and whatever. Yeah. But he worked for that. He went on expeditions and he mined the Aether gold out of the clouds, and he's a very industrious fellow. Yeah, so essentially he is the head of my list. So I'll run through my list quickly now. So
you've got the points that you need for the army now.
Yeah, so what happened was I got into KO after I decided which Age of Sigmar army I was going to play, and I just want to preface by saying that I did get into them prior to the recent points drop in the General's Handbook. So some of you might out there be thinking, oh, what a cheese list, he's picking the shooty Duarden that are going to be the next hot thing. I mean, they may well be, but I did choose them for their aesthetic, because obviously to want to paint 2,000 points worth of Duarden, you got to like what you're looking at. Yeah, I'm not a meta chaser, and I mean, I have a pretty regular game with an Orc player. My housemate plays Oryx, Destruction, led by Gordrak, as I've mentioned before, and... yeah, I like this sort of dichotomy between the technology and the armor and stuff versus like the brutal nature of the destruction armies and stuff like that. So I have a bit of a rotating 2,000 points, and recently I was able to slot in another medium-sized frigate boat due to the points drop, so it means more points became available within the list. So heading up my list is the Lord Magnate of Barak Nar himself, Brock Grunson. So he's my admiral or my general as far as, the leader of the entire army goes. He's pretty cool. He comes with his sort of custom dirigible suit and, all the best Duarden tech that money can buy. And I've even taken this a step further with my own sort of customization of the list, that I've taken the Mechanicus robots that are... they're blanking on them now. I want to say Cataphrone, but that's the tank guys. They're the... oh, God. Embarrassment. It'll come to me later. So they're the Catalan robots, I think, is what they are. Anyway, I've basically got a 40k kit that looks a bit steampunky. So I've basically upgraded his suit. So he's now Mecha Brock. So basically same stats, same rules and whatever, but he has a special move on his War Scroll that when he charges into the enemy in a special type of scenario there, he can actually end up crushing one of the enemy because his charge is so brutal and his armor is so heavy. So I thought it sort of suited him better to have a better suit of armor. And then sort of his little... I guess, second in command. He's got two. So he's got the other named character from the Caradron Overlords, which is Bjorgen Thundrick. So he's an Aether chemist that has a little retinue of like a bodyguard and Castellan robots. That's what it was. God damn it. I knew I'd get there eventually. So Castellan robots and Cataphrone destroyers, a little bit of a kit bash that I've added in there just because they have that steampunky aesthetic. So I feel like they merge, the Mechanicus stuff merges really well into Age of Sigmar, as long as you don't leave too many, laser guns and cables and electrical skulls and things showing. But yeah, so I've got my Aether Chemist, so he's not really a crucial part of the list. He actually gets rotated out depending on what I feel like running at the time if I don't have the points to spare. But then I have the sort of leader of my allied detachment is Lord Vorus Starstrike. Now he's a Lord Ordinator. And basically what they are is they're like the architects or the artillery experts of the Stormcast Eternals. They feature heavily in what's known as shootcast, so Stormcast to shootcast this, which is a Stormcast army that favors firepower versus like your melee, stuff like that. And he gives the whole army. Brock gives the army some cool bonuses, and if they're within wholly within 24 of him, certain things happen and stuff like that. There's a lot going on with the Caradron army. They're a very high skill army if you play them properly, because their weapons are quite complicated. They have lots of different guns.
A lot of strategy.
Once again, very similar to Space Marines. They've got a lot of war gear. They've probably got the most war gear in the Age of Sigmar, and they are the rootinest, tootinest, shootinest army in the mortal realms. That's for damn sure. And what Lord Vorus does is he has a 9-inch sort of bubble around him that buffs war machines. So within my army and my Stormcast I always say alloys for some reason, allies, is Lord Vorus comes... equipped with some Celestar ballistas, which are basically the big lightning bolt firing crossbows of the Stormcast Eternals, them being war machines as well. But not only that, it works nicely as allies for my Caradron, because he buffs all war machines, and not only are the Celestar ballistas keyworded as war machines, but all of my boats are considered war machines too. So my little strat, and the strat that paid off great dividends against the Oryx, was... So my boats essentially ferry my Thunderers, which are my battle line troops. So when you run Barak Nar, you get to choose the Thunderers as the battle line troops, as opposed to the poxy little Arcanauts. So basically my Caradron army contains 0 Arcanauts, but that means I must stick to the Barak Nar banner. As in, I always play Barak Nar. My leader is Brock Grunson of Barak Nar. They are Barak Nar, end of story. I can never change and be any other army, or I then would have to buy Arcanauts and run a completely different battle line for it to be a legal tournament playable army. Obviously you can do whatever you like in your beer and pretzels home games if your friends let you, but I like to keep it pretty straight as far as that goes. So basically my sort of strat is to ferry my battle line Thunderers out onto objectives, and then they like to sit tight onto objectives, with their great amounts of firepower backing them up so they can hold on to those objectives. And then I quickly get all my boats back into my 9-inch bubble around Lord Vorus, and because of the boats having such great range, they then just spread it on. Essentially, they just unload every piece of artillery they possibly have at anything that's possibly coming anywhere near, and then you inch Lord Vorus and the ballistas up the board, and that obviously moves the bubble along. And if you keep everything nice and tight in that bubble, it's paid off for me so far, but I've really only played the one Auric army. Yeah. And Oryx being pretty light on shooting, you're only really competing with bows and arrows. You know what I mean? So
at this point, yeah, so that
you
have to wait and see.
Yeah, so that works kind of nicely as far as that goes. But shooting in the meta is pretty strong, because not a lot of armies have shooting. But you're always going to get those heavy melee armies like Khorne, and even the Stormcast and stuff that come charging at you with, and do some really... Fire Slayers, obviously, the other half of the Duardan race that are more melee focused. If they come running at you with their Hearthguard Berserker axes and stuff like that, you're going to be in trouble. But... So then we'll move on to my Thunderers, which are my battle line. So I have 4 groups of 5 Thunderers currently. They can also be either like 2 groups of 10 or 4 groups of 5, but I find the 5s work out better for like objective holding and stuff like that so far. But they have some cool stuff too, where if one of them has a thing called a Athematic Fumigator, which is basically like a big fumigating bellow thing, if you can imagine what they used to kill bugs with in the old days.
Smoke them out,
smoke them out kind of thing. Essentially, when any of those hardcore melee armies get within 3 inches of my Thunderers, there's an ability they have called, or a command trait, or whatever you want to call it, a command ability, or, on the War Scroll, called Choking Fug. So essentially, because these guys have such heavy firepower, their big smoking gun, like the smoke from their guns lingers in the air, which then chokes out the enemy and gives them like a -1 to hit or wound, or, depending on the situation. So they're actually quite good defensively against melee armies, and then the closer the melee army gets, the better their aim gets. So when you're within 3 inches of the Thunderers, it's actually quite a dangerous spot to be, because they shoot really well anyway, but they shoot even better up close, and then you're at a disadvantage choking on their fug. FUG fug. Yeah, so if you're choking on the fug and you're up close, if you're up in the Thunderers' grills, it's just really not a good place to be, essentially. So then we move on to the actual, the backbone of any good Caradron army, which is the Sky Fleet. So with the points drop, I'm actually able to run a couple of Grunstock gun haulers. So the Grunstock is like the military wing of the Caradron, whereas the Arcanauts and the Admirals and stuff like that are like the mercantile sort of side of things. But the Grunstock are your dedicated like military troops that are essentially... So within a Caradron army, they don't just go to war because they have to or they're patriotic or anything like that. Everyone's on a salary, right?
Everyone's getting paid.
Yeah, so Brock is the head of the army, but Brock is also the CEO of that army, and he pays everyone and he kits them out, and he's got to keep them happy, and they don't really look for glory, but what they do is that in the lore, their victories and any enemies they've defeated basically goes on their type of resume. So then they can demand higher payment when they then, allow their services to be used in a future battle. They're almost like their accreditations.
Yeah.
It's a cool sort of way that I think it's a cool way that Games Workshop sort of wrote the lore on these guys. I find that all very interesting, and being an ex-mechanic myself and feeling like I'm a bit of a Dwarden at heart, a gruff little technological man who likes to tinker with things and shoot guns, it fits me really well, I feel, and that's another big part about, building an army in any game system. You have to want to like them and relate to them and identify with them, basically. So I have two gun haulers. One's called Sky Runner and one's called Windhammer, which are shout outs to an old 80s cartoon called Silverhawks that you may remember there. Pretty cool. One of the best 80s cartoon intros ever made, Silverhawks. Go jump on YouTube, check that one out there. So yeah, two little gun haulers. These ones don't carry guys. These are like little manned vessels that are just pure firepower, almost like the tugboat kind of thing. But they escort the bigger boats and they protect them, and they can absorb wounds for the bigger boats and things like that. And also, as I said, war machines that get the buff from good old Lord Vorus and his 9-inch bubble. And then the heart of my army, which is aptly named the Wrath of Grugni, which is obviously the title of my entire force, is my Caradron Ironclad. So that's your big ship that you can see over on the counter there. That's
the recently acquired, yeah.
Yeah, which I will be doing up in sort of a Black Pearl style, and I'll get to why that is a little bit later on when I delve into my own little backstory of my little wing of Barak Nar. So this is your big, it used to be 500 point behemoth-y sort of model, but now it's around the 480, I think, from memory. I have to rejig my list a little bit after the General's Handbook, but I mean, we're talking guns on guns on guns. Like this boat just shits friggin' firepower. Do you know what I mean? Like really, really good stuff. 18 wounds, can move around the table, can disengage after, shooting phases and sort of fly up high into the sky. And it's a really tricky, piece of artillery. Really, really cool model as well. Like one of the biggest, coolest, of the new models in my opinion. And that also can transport. So this is one of the boats that I use to drop off, guys on objectives, or, sometimes they can garrison the boat and hang out in the boat and stuff, depending on, the terrain and what you're dealing with. And then I have a recent addition to the fleet is the frigate, which between the gun hauler and the ironclad,
medium.
Yeah, so you got your small, medium, and large boat. The frigate is your middle-sized boat, which still packs quite a punch. Can transport troops as well, less troops than the ironclad, obviously, but obviously more than the smaller boat, which can only transport troops in a very special circumstance, which I'm not allowed to do because I run Barak Nar. But if you give it a special, little ability there, they can transport, I think, up to 5 guys in a different skyport. But this one is your more maneuverable, faster boat. So if you have like a suicide mission, or you really need to get somebody somewhere quick, and it's not as durable as the ironclad, but it certainly puts out a decent amount of firepower. So I mean, that's sort of basically how I play my KO and how I envision them. And I just want to sort of just delve into when you pick an army, I really do highly recommend you buying a battle tome. Like I said, I'm not spruiking any of Games Workshop's wares beyond what I already do, but this is the first army where I didn't just jump into building and painting models. I really did my research. I bought the battle tome first. I read it cover to cover because I wasn't sure really which direction I wanted to go with the dwarves. And there was one little passage in this book. So the battle tome is, a couple of, I think, 100 pages or whatever, full of great stuff, lore, pictures, models, battle scenes, all that sort of stuff that can give you loads and loads of inspiration, all the different sub-factions and color schemes and paint guides.
Suggestions,
Yeah, that sort of thing. But and I've heard this said before, it's not like I invented this or anything, but, sometimes it only takes one little passage of lore, or maybe like a throwaway line. It doesn't even have to necessarily be anything...
it's like reading a blurb on the back of the book. It
Yeah.
gets you hooked.
Yeah, it's not necessarily strategically important. It doesn't have any rules attached to it. I get no bonuses or buffs, but essentially after reading this paragraph... this is the direction I'm going with my army, okay? So I'm just going to read a little passage from the recent Caradron Battle Tome, the book according to Brock. All right, so... Since the dawn of the Necroquake, storms of geists and wraiths have plagued many of the great skyports. Tales abound of lost Barak Dermaz caught in the death storms of Shaish and entirely overwhelmed by the spectral processions of the Nighthaunts. It is said that the port still plies the sky lanes crewed by the bitter spirits of dead Duarden. So essentially this refers to a subfaction of KO that no longer exists. So that's a Barak Dermaz. So when good old mate Nagash, Lord High Commander of the Forces of the Dead, unleashed the Necroquake at the beginning of the Soul Wars, ghosts fly. And unfortunately, the Caradron had really no defenses against flying ghosts. So big giant swarms of Necroquake geists and things like that could absolutely just fly straight into their skyports, which essentially the skyports being little floating cities in the sky, protected them from basically all the chaos goings on the ground. But nobody accounted for Nagash's shenanigans. So Barak Dermaz is a skyport that was lost, obviously, and now it's essentially like a ghost town up in the sky in the realm of Shaish, which is the the darky, shadowy kind of deathy kind of realm. I believe so. Yeah, that's correct. And so reading further on, this is the part that sort of really grabbed me. In response to similar disasters, many of the skyports have decreed the formation of the elite Grundstock unit. So that's the militarized wing of the Caradron that I mentioned before. So my army, the Thunderers, the Grundstock Gunhaulers, are dedicated military trained troops, etc., etc. So they specialize in the destruction of non-physical entities. So as soon as I read this, my brain went straight to, who you going to call? Ghostbusters. And then if you read on, it says these black marines, so generally they would be armored in the gold and purple of the Barak Nar. These black marines, so named for the obsidian armor carapaces they wear, so obviously obsidian black armor, so sort of special elite troops that hunt ghosts, essentially the Caradron Ghostbusters. Regardless of Skyport affiliation, they are armed with scattershot rifles and equipped with a variety of anti-ethereal equipment and weaponry. Celestium burst grenades, Celestinator, oh my god, the Caradron armaments are a tongue twister. Celestinator lenses and Aether vapor projectors. They were first deployed during the Wraith Fleet conflict, where they fought against the ghostly corsairs of the vampire Vargos Vectora with notable success. So basically, what happened was Barak Nar, being the biggest fleet of Caradron, went to fight the ghosts of the Necroquake, and they lost 1/5 of their fleet, which for any Duarden who's invested good gold coin into his fleet, that's a pretty hard pill to swallow there. So essentially, my lore is based around the fact that Brock Grunson, the leader of the greatest and vast skyport of Barak Nar, he took a hit. He took a hit from Nagash. He's not happy about it. He's pissed. So essentially what my Brock has done is he's doubled down, he's spent some gold, he's upgraded his suit, he's got a mean fleet of boats going, he's hired the Black Obsidian Order of Grundstock Marines, who are essentially the Ghostbusters.
This time it's personal.
This time it is personal. They went for they heard his wallet, and he's just not taking it, basically, is what he's all about. So, and he's also hired the Celestial Warbringers. So the Celestial Warbringers are my Stormcast allies, which it works out so perfectly because they're also purple and gold. These are an actual Storm host from the lore. And the Celestial Warbringers have their special feature as far as Stormcast, because each Storm host has a different sort of backstory and whatnot, is they are all psychic to the sense of they know exactly when they're going to die. So they've all foreseen their own death. They know when it's coming. They know how far away they're.
The most of it.
Yeah, so basically when they rage into battle, if they know like today is not my day to die, they can go hammer and tongs and not have to worry because they know they're walking away. So it's almost this over sense of confidence. So in my mind, that makes them an incredibly good investment, which is very important to Brock. So obviously he can sign like a contract with these Warbringers and say, look, I'm going to pay you and kit you out for a year. and none of you are going to drop dead, so I'm going to get my money's worth, basically. So that I like. I was very proud of that little, connection that I made in the lore there. So basically, as far as kit bashers go, I've got Brock in his big Castellan mecha suit. And then my Warbringers are kitted out with their Celestar Ballistas are actually based using the Cataphrone Destroyer tanks. So normally the Stormcast would have to pick up and pack up their big crossbows and like lug them across the battlefield, whereas Brock is having none of that. Brock is a very fancy gilded man. So my ballistas are mounted beautifully on little steampunk.
So that's one of your customs.
Yeah, steampunk tank tracks. And the Cataphrone Destroyer and the Castellan Robot kits are such great. All the mechanics kits are great for kit bashing, actually, because you get so many little
bits and bobs,
gubbins and wires and bits and bobs. And what I've been able to do is I've actually been able to kit out my Thunderers with essentially Ghostbuster gear. So the Cataphrone backpacks look like Ghostbuster backpacks, and their plasma cannons look like the Ghostbuster guns. So, as long as my Duarden don't cross streams, Nagash is in a bit of trouble, if you get my meaning. So, yeah, half my fleet will be the purple and gold, and then the specialty troops will be denoted by the black armor, which will make them easier to identify on the board too. It's very important when you build an army that you're not, the Caradron have enough things to catch you out with all their guns and their dice rolls and their buffs and things like that. But to be like, oh, hang on, which unit's my elite unit? Which gun is which? If I've got my elites marked out in black and they have a black ship, the Black Pearl, and I want to do a bit of cool, tongue-in-cheek Ghostbuster stuff there, where I might have some Nighthaunt skulls hanging off my boat, maybe like a ghost coming out of the top of the ship. So, they're the scary, battle-hardened, obsidian veterans with the longest, most impressive resumes in the fleet. So, yeah, that is the Wrath of Grugni in its entirety. It's I own the whole army, as I do with my Sons of Horus. It's just a matter now of finishing them up.
Chipping away.
And painting them. But I have been playing with them sort of half painted and half assembled and proxying bits and pieces here with Scrabble tiles and cologne bottles as I face the forces of destruction. But look, it's a good time, and it's a fantastic army. I'm not the greatest player in the world, as I've mentioned before, Jared. You're probably I'd consider to be a better general
strategist.
Yeah, better strategist in general and War Scroll decipherer than myself. But if you love the army and you really want to get in deep and double down and learn their rules and stuff like that, then it's a great army. I have my cheat sheets when I play to make sure I'm doing everything correctly, and every time you play, you get a little bit better. So
eventually, the boat's all done up and the unit ready to go.
Yeah, so that's my other great love alongside my Space Marines is my Caradron force, and almost more fun to hobby with, actually, because you get to experiment with all the metallic colours and the beautiful new Runelord brass base colour and spray paint and things like that are heavily featured within the force. And I look forward to more updates and getting them up on Instagram for everybody to see.
I look forward to seeing one of the boats finished first and foremost. You're working on a tank at the moment.
Yeah, I do have one of my gun haulers is sort of base coated, but they're quite intricate models. It's going to take me some time. There's a lot of rivets, a lot of edges, and bits and bobs, but it's going to be a labour of love. The whole army's magnetised. They all have custom bases. It's actually an army that I hope to one day take to like Armies on Parade on a display board.
Yeah.
I envision a bit of a Skyport scenario being attacked by the Nighthaunt. So I've actually got some Nighthaunt models that will feature as sort of like scenery later on, and give the Ghostbusters something to attack, so I'm pretty excited about it. It's a long-term project.
They all are, aren't they?
I know. I have a very good mind's eye, so I can always envision my army the way I want it very early on. I get very excited, but then obviously your hands and your hands and eyes only move so fast, and you only get so many hours in the day. So
that is true.
Yeah, but so thanks everybody for listening to that. I just thought we'll do a bit of a Sigmar focused episode. It's been pretty heavily heresy focused so far, and I just wanted to give and once again, it's just a little trap that I set for myself. I like to say things out loud, almost to hold myself accountable to them. Yeah,
now,
because
before we dock this ship, I guess,
before we head back to the Skyport.
That's it. Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to mention, or?
No, look, I think I've waffled enough about the dwarves in this episode. I just would encourage everybody to, when you build an army, whether it's Age of Sigmar, 30k, 40k, even Necromunda gangs and things like that, looking into the lore and just finding that one little topic or that one little thing to hinge off. Whatever makes it interesting for you. Like I said, they're having the elite ghost busting,
that premise.
Yeah, that premise there. That really, it fired me up. It got me really, really raring to go to get stuck into this army. And here I am. I'm right on the cusp of it, and ready to get stuck in, as I said. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's where we'll end this episode today in terms of the podcast.
Yeah.
Big shout out to my darling wife. Thank you for all your support as always. It's a bit of a running thing now.
Yeah, thank you to my beautiful sister-in-law for allowing the time away from his ever-growing family.
That's it. And I guess until next time.
Thanks for listening, guys. See you later.
Love you, bro.
Love you, bro.